Hey, yes, you're live.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Happy post Tu B'Shvat. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We're going to start already with Purim. It's just about a month away, but because Thursday night, the last night before Purim, is already Megilat Esther, so people are going to be busy with their fast. So I'm not sure we'll be able to do one. And in general, it's good to get into the spirit of Purim. Bezrat Hashem. We should start seeing the Nisim, and also we should start seeing the great things that we are accustomed to during the month of Adar, is already known as a month of Nisim. We should start seeing them soon. Once we pass the 15th of the month before, it says we start thinking about the next month. So Shloshim Yom Kodem Achag. So we're almost at Shloshim Yom Kodem Achag. We're actually closer to than that. This happens to be one of my favorite Zera Shimshons of all time, both for its content. And also just in general, I think it's just a valuable, it's just a great lesson for all of us. So we have two versions of the book. The English one, which is Sefer Zera Shimshon in English, it's on page 16, Drush Gimel. And if you have the Hebrew one, it's in the back. And as I said, I'm sorry if I'm coughing in the middle. I've been battling since last Shabbos, a little bit of a cold. So Bezrat Hashem, and also I just wanted to say on Tuesday night all of us were at the amazing Hilul Lav Rabbi Yitzchak Abu Chatzera that was in Efrat. I just wanted to say that I saw last night, and I shared it in the group, but I want to say it just in public because I want everyone to realize that last year, I'm not even going to say who, but one of the hostages' mothers wrote a note on a bottle.
It's on Israel National.
Yeah, it's on National. Okay, so it's Agam Berger. Yeah, it's public knowledge. Agam Berger's mother, who actually throughout this time has become closer and closer to Yiddishkeit, she wrote a note on the bottle last year and left it in Agam's room. Now, again, I'm not saying it's the bottle, but whoever the tzaddik is, you have to say there's got to be the power of Torah and the power of tzaddikim is real, because it's unbelievable. I mean, it was mamash unbelievable. And besides the stories that we were sharing at the actual Hilula, which were amazing also. But, that one just brought me to tears last night when I was watching. It was mamash, just unbelievable. Anyway, so, so we're at the story of Purim. We know the basic story of Purim. At the beginning of the Megillah, we have the story in which the famous Mishteh, in which Achashverosh invites all the people from all over the lands, and everyone gets a little bit drunk, or everyone gets a little bit, or is meant to get drunk, and he's supposed to show off Vashti, and she doesn't come. And at part of in the beginning, first few psukim of the Megillah, it says that the shtiyah, the drink was kadat enones, meaning it was just like every person, most people say it's, everyone drank as if there was anyone who could drink whatever they want. You drink a big cup, drink a small cup, drink whatever. We want you to drink. The Gemara says actually every person said, I want to drink this kind of wine from my country, so they gave them that country. In other words, it was like a real feast. It was a real thing. And it says, the Pasuk says, Vashtiya kadat enones, basically, the Sar Mashkim, Achashverosh told the Sar Mashkim of his kingdom, whatever people want, whatever they get, give them whatever you want, make them drunk. That's what I want. That's what I want. That's what Achashverosh is saying. Now, interestingly, and this is not the first time that the Zera Shimshon does this, but he says here, Lasot Kirtzon Ish Vaish, Perish Rashi. Now, it doesn't actually say. Rashi on the Megillah doesn't actually say this. The Rashi that he's talking about is actually in the Gemara Megillah, not in the Megillah itself. There's Rashi on the Megillah, on Masechet Megillah, not on the Megillah itself. Rashi on the Megillah does not mention Ish Va'ish. It just says, the Rashi on the Megillah here, on the actual Megillah, Megilat Esther, Ish Va'ish, it says, L'chol achad kirsono, meaning every person as they want it. Rashi on Masechet Megillah says, there's actually the Gemara in the Megillah says, not Rashi. The Gemara in Megillah says that Kirtzon Haman Mordecai Shaman Lo Haya Rotzeh She'ansu Otam Lishtot Yinam Kedei Sheyu Ne'enashim V'im Yishtu Bones Yiptu Min HaOnesh. So Rashi, or the Gemara there says that Achashverosh Meaning, Achashverosh wanted that every person kirtso means like that every person doing it. Hey, shalom. Every person would be drinking at their own will, right? In other words, doing it at their own will. And the Gemara there says that it was alluding to what Haman and Mordecai were wanting. What does that mean? Ish. What does it mean? The word ish repeats twice, right? It says kirtzon ish va'ish. So the Gemara says that it's these two men. Both of them wanted them to be drinking, but not by force. Why? Mordecai didn't want them both. Right? No, sorry. So they both wanted them not to be drunk by force. Mordecai didn't want them to drink by force because he didn't want them to drink at all. Right? Because if they're drinking, what does that mean? They're going to be doing stuff that's not appropriate. Right? They're drinking with the Amcha, with the non-Jews, whatever it is. It's not appropriate. And right? And why did Haman not want them to be drinking by force? Because if they're drinking by force, then they're patur from the onesh. He wants to punish them. If I force you to do something, right? Then what? Haman wasn't stupid. He knows that if I force them to drink, is that your phone?
No.
Okay. Okay. If I force them to drink, then I can't take them out to onesh and say these guys I need to kill them, right? Because they're forced. They're being forced. So he says, right? So he says Haman did not want the people of the kingdom to force the Jews to drink, because then the Jews would be because the Jews, he wanted to punish them, right? And he was aware that if we drink yayin nesech against your will, it's not one of the big three. They'll be willing to, they're like, okay, I'm being forced. What am I going to do? I can't do anything, right? And they'll be absolved from punishment, and then, right? And Hashem won't punish them, or either Hashem won't punish them or Haman won't punish them, right? So he didn't want to. He wanted them to deserve the punishment. So he says, good question. He says, Kashe. What do we know about Haman? Haman was also, right? He was a bad man, yes. What else do we know about Haman? Haman, at some point in the Megillah, he says he wants everyone to bow down to him, right? So what's the question? If I know the logic is that Haman didn't want to force the Jews to drink, what would be the logical next step to be? The same question is, why would you force them to bow down to you? Because the same rule applies. If I force you to drink, then I'm not punished. I can't be punished. So if I force you to bow down, I can't be punished either. Right? So that's the logic. Right? You understand the question? Right? So the question, what he's asking is, I don't understand it. If Haman understood that the Jew can't be, if a Jew is forced, then he's not punished. He doesn't get punished. So then, what's the difference between drinking or bowing down? Either way, if you force him to do it, I can't be punished for it because it's I'm being honest. It's considered honest, right? I'm being forced, and being forced means you're not being punished. So he says, right? So he says, how did Haman want to force them to bow down? Shayulot slamim alibo. They say either Haman himself was either considered, or he considered himself to be an avodah zarah, or he had something around his neck. So either way, he wanted them to bow down to the avodah zarah, meaning either it's Haman himself or the little idol that he had around his neck. Either way, like I said, if they're being forced, this is his question. Like if they're being forced, why would Haman even consider it? So he says like this: after once Haman saw that the Jews enjoyed the drinking at the Mishteh. What did Haman say? Right? They drank the wine willingly. Right? He doesn't have to force him anymore. Why not? Because once they said, I'm doing it because I want to, I don't have to, because then what? They opened the crack. They've opened the door saying I'm willing to do anything. I don't need to worry about forcing the guy anymore because he's willing to break. Meaning the Jew comes to the party. And he says, I'm going to drink, let's be merry. And he drinks and be merry. So now Haman says, okay, I have nothing to worry about. If he's willing to do that, I'm sure he's willing to do this too. Right? In other words, the person is not staying strong to his commitment, is Judaism. So what is he doing? He's being flexible. He's saying, here I'm going to drink with everyone because everyone's doing it. That's okay. Well, but Haman's like, no, that's not okay. I want you. If you drink, I know that once I know that you're willing to break a little bit, then bowing down is no big deal for you. Like, all right, I'll do it. Now watch what happens here. This is what I like about it. So he says, and it says now on another basic right. Then he says, So he says like this. Okay, so he says, this whole premise of this Torah is based on one thing. That Haman said, what was Haman's premise? Haman's premise was that basically, if I can get them to do things willingly, right? If I can do the whole idea, right? In other words, what's Haman's idea? Haman's idea is, I want them to do things willingly so that they deserve a punishment. And then meaning him coming in and asking to kill the Jews, it's no big deal because they're willing to bend, they're willing to give up. So he says now he's going to ask a question, or he's going to kind of fine tune the question, and then then he's going to bring it all together, which is beautiful. So he says, if you in Perek Gimel, it says that it says Perek Gimel. Okay. So it says that's when Haman comes into the scene. In Perek Gimel is when we actually hear about Haman's name first time, and it says in Perek Dalet it says that every day Mordecai would not bow to Haman, right? Every day, and they would say, "Oh, he's Jewish," right? He would say he's Jewish, and they'd say, "Wait, we want to see whether." It says, he told Haman to see whether Mordecai's words, "Ve'agidu la'aman lirot hayamdu divrei Mordecai ki yigid lahem asher hu Yehudi." So the English translation says they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's words would endure or come true, for he had told them that he was a Jew. Okay, so now he says Shenireh. So he says Shenireh she'amar davar she'efshar lo shelo ya'amod. Right, when you say hayamdu divrei Mordecai, it sounds like there's something that Mordecai is going to do. It sounds like it says, will his words endure? Will his words hold water? Right? Let's instead of saying endure, say hold water. Or will they be true? Right? If I say that, what does that mean? That there's a chance that they won't be true. Meaning that there's something that he's going to do or not do, or say or not say, that may be, in other words, he's up until now saying that he's a Jew. Right? But Haman's like, wait a minute. Let's see if he's really a Jew. That's what Haman is thinking. Test him. Now, how's he going to test him? What do you say? Exactly, test him. Right? Right? That would maybe said something. So, what's the only thing he said? He said the only thing he said is he's a Jew. So, what's the only thing that Haman can test him on? His Judaism. Right? That's the only thing he can test him on. So, let's see if you're really willing to break. Right? Because what did we learn about earlier? We said that at the party, the Jews were willing to do what? To break. They're willing to drink as much as they want. Right? They're willing to do it, even though they know that they're drinking with non-Jews. Let's just say it was kosher wine. Let's just say it was kosher wine. Right? Even if it wasn't kosher wine, that's even worse. Mordecai didn't want them to drink non-kosher wine because it's non-kosher wine, and also not to be drinking with non-Jews. But if Haman says, "Oh, I saw you drinking over there," right? So then that's their breaking point, right? So now Mordecai wasn't there. He wasn't at the party, right? He wasn't there, but he didn't want them to drink either, right? Now he says, "Look." So this is what he says. Since this was the fact, there was no need to see whether Mordecai's words would endure. Why? Because the fact is that he was a Jew. The fact that he was a Jew was enough for Haman to say, we don't need to know whether the words will endure or not. Why? Because he's a Jew. And this is what he's going to say. Right? In the next pasuk afterwards, it says that Haman gets angry at Mordecai. We know Haman is told that he's not bowing down to him. So what happens? Haman gets angry. He gets angry, and what happens? He says, I'm getting angry, I want to kill Mordecai. But not only do I want to kill Mordecai, first he wants to kill Mordecai. Then he says, no, skip Mordecai. I want to kill the Jews. Now the question is, where does he make the jump? What is so bad about Mordecai doing what he did? Right? What do we know about the Jews? The Jews bow down, right? Mordecai was the one that didn't bow down. So who should he be upset at? Mordecai. But he's upset at Mordecai. He's not even upset at Mordecai. What is he really upset at? The Jews, because he bowed down. So now what the Zera Shimshon is setting up is that he's saying is, it seems to, at least according to the Zera Shimshon, the way I read it, is that the Zera Shimshon is saying is that Haman was trying to find the breaking point, the tipping point. Was it the Jews, the commitment, because they were drinking at the party, and they're willing to bow down, right? So there's something here that doesn't make sense to him, to Haman. Are you Jews? If you're a Jew, you're committed, right? And he's going to get to that point in a second. So he says, why Haman, right? Why do you want them to force that? Why did he want them? Why did he force the Jews to bow down to get punishment? Why? So he says that indeed was not seeking to have the Jews it says here, based on the earlier question, why Haman sought to force the Jews to bow down, even though they would not lead to their punishment? The Zera Shimshon suggests that Haman indeed was not seeking to have the Jews incur liability for the sin of bowing down. Like you'll see what he says. He says, "V'yesh lomar shaman lo haya avodah zarah mamash." There's a machloket in the Gemara and the Rishonim about whether Haman himself was of avodah zarah, or what, like I said before, does he carry an avodah zarah around his neck, right? If we say that he was an actual avodah zarah, either way, right? What do we know? That if we say that if Haman wasn't an actual avodah zarah and they bowed down to him, what is the problem? Is there a problem? I mean, it's not the right thing to do, but at the end of the day, I bowed down to a person. Is it the best thing to do? No. But he's not an avodah zarah, right? So it's not like I'm chayav an avodah zarah, right? So he says, the Jews didn't have to sacrifice their life for bowing down to Haman because he wasn't an avodah zarah, according to that opinion. According to in Sanhedrin 6, Daf Samach Aleph, which is in the Daf Yomi cycle, will be there in a couple of days. He had something around his neck, exactly. So he Ki'ilu made them bow down to him, but he was really making them bow down to the avodah zarah. But let's just say he wasn't avodah zarah himself, right? So then that's no big deal, right? The Gemara explains that if you do it out of love or fear, meaning if I bow down either out of love for something or out of fear for myself, right? I'm not actually accepting the avodah zarah as Hashem, as a God forbid. No, I'm not accepting. I'm doing it because I'm scared this guy's gonna, blow my brains out. I'm not I'm not really accepting it. I'm doing it because.
Isn't that exactly the Yarov L'Ayavor?
Yeah, but again, if I'm bowing down to the person because I know that if I don't do it, I'm scared. It's out of fear. Then there's no real punishment. I'm not chayav. I'm not chayav for. It's a kiddush Hashem. The opposite, right? It's Yareg L'Ayavor. I mean, yes, I should die. Right, but if I don't have to, I should say no. I'm standing strong, right? If I really believe, if I'm doing it out of fear, I'm not doing it because I want to do it, right? The reason why you're bichayav on avodah zarah is because I want to do it. I'm not doing it because I want to. So he says like this. He says, Af Mordecai hayalo lishtachavot. If we assume this direction that Haman was not actually avodah zarah, what should Mordecai have done? He could have bowed down to him. Right? Because he wasn't avodah zarah. Like there was no reason. Like he could have said what? He could have said, okay, he's not avodah zarah. I'm not doing anything. He says, no, this is my favorite line. Not yet, but one of my favorite lines of Zera Shimshon is coming up. He said that he acted as if to do it to be a Mekadesh Hashem. He said, I know that I could. Right? There are a lot of things we could do. Right? It's like going into, like I gave the example the other day when I was learning with someone. Right? Imagine you have to go to the bathroom. Right, and you're on a road trip, and the closest bathroom is in a McDonald's, and you don't have a baseball hat, and you don't want to take off your kippah, right? You walk into the bathroom, you go to the McDonald's. Could anyone say, okay, sir, go right in there, no problem? Now, is there a chance, a small chance that someone might see you and say, hey, there's a Jew going into McDonald's? Yes. If you really have to go, I'm sure you'd say, I'll take off my kippah. I'd rather do that than walk in with the kippah. But let's...
Kosher. Well, kosher, what do you mean?
What? Oh, right. I'm saying, but the point is that for Kiddush Hashem purposes, you probably could say, you know what, I'll wait 5 more minutes, I'll drive 5 more minutes on the road. If I really have to go, then I'll do something else. But I'll wait 5 more minutes on the road. Maybe there's a gas station, right? And then I know for Kiddush Hashem purposes, and that may be, the example is not the exact correlation, but the idea is the same. Mordecai knew that he didn't have to bow. He could have bowed down because he wasn't avodah zarah. He could have easily said, "Okay, fine," but he said, "No, I want to be Mekadesh Hashem. I want to stay strong on my commitment and my Judaism." And then he says, "V'zo hayta kavanat Mordecai. Af al pi shehu eino avodah zarah u'minadin mutar." This is my favorite line of the whole. I think all of Zera Shimshon. We're doing Jewish Gimel in Megillah and Megilat Esther.
Why Dafka Midrash?
I'll tell you why in a second. Let me just say my favorite line of all of it, Zera Shimshon, and then okay. Ani rotzeh lihiyot Yehudi shalem. It's my favorite line. It's my favorite line of all of it, Zera Shimshon, I think. Ve'ini rotzeh lishtachavot lo klal v'ikar. I want to be an absolute Jew. All right, a complete Jew. Right, a Jew does not bow. I only bow down to Hashem. Right, I want to be a full Jew. All into one or two lessons, we miss things. So this way we'll do it, pays it out, and we'll see. Excuse me. So he says, so the Mordecai is saying that I'm not going to let Haman or anyone test my Judaism. I'm doing Judaism all the way. This is Judaism all the way, 100%. If you think, yes, I know that probably by halachic standards, I can, no problem. Right? It's like there are so many examples of what we could do. Halachically, I'm sure I could do X, Y, Z. That would be no problem. But I realized that I think there was a famous story. I think there was a story by, there's a book, what's it called? To Kindle a Soul. Yeah, there's a book called To Kindle a Soul. I forgot by who wrote it. And he says, the flash is on. And he says there that his son also, I think the same story, like his son had to go to the restroom, and they were on the trip, and the son, was a frum guy, kid, and they said, what? So the father goes to him, we can go in here. They walk into a bar. So the father and the kid goes there, and he goes, Abba, what are they doing here? He says, well, I just want to let you know that, he says, like, non-Jews, when they want to, like, just waste time, not waste time, but, like, enjoy themselves, go out, whatever, they go to a bar and they talk about their problems, they drink their problems away. And the kid goes, is that what good Jews do? Or something like that. And the father was just like, mind blown. Like, just completely, he's just like, nope, that's not what Jews are supposed to do. And like, he's like, just go to the bathroom, rest, and turn around. Like, it was like this crazy story. I have to find the story, but it's a very powerful story. But the idea here is the same thing. He says, we're Jews. We're meant to hold on to our, like, we hold on to, like, the big three, right? Shvichut Damim, Gilui Arayot, Avodah Zarah, right? Meaning, those are the ones we're supposed to go for. Like, those are the ones we're supposed to die for. Everything else, if he's not an idol himself, and he's not, maybe he'll be upset, but is he going to really kill us? Maybe not, probably not. I mean, nowhere does it say that he actually is going to kill the Jews because they didn't bow down to him, right? So he says, so Mordecai was saying is that he'd rather, yes, it's permitted for me to bow down, but I'd rather be a complete Jew, an absolute Jew. And now he says, Kedamar bePerakama de Megillah. Mordecai, how do we explain Mordecai's actions? The Gemara in the first parak in Megillah says, Yehudi, right? So why was Mordecai called the Mordecai Yehudi? Lama nikra shmo Yehudi. Why did he call himself a Yehudi? Shekafar ba'avodah zarah. Right? He says that he rejected idolatry. Now, what's the obvious question on that statement? Every Jew is supposed to be rejecting idolatry. So therefore, you and I should all be called, Sasha HaYehudi, right? Mordechai Yehudi, L.A. Yehudi. We're all supposed to call HaYehudi because what? Because we rejected idolatry. What's the big deal? Like, that's not a big feat. Right? It's not a mila for, right? That's what the Gemara says. So he says, isn't it, right? That's his obligation, is not to bow down to reject idolatry. So if that's the case, I should get the name HaYehudi, the Jew, for that, right? That doesn't make sense. Ela vadai, it must be that we have to say that Haman was not actually an idol. He wasn't actually an idol. Ela she'asa lifnei mishurat hadin, that rather Mordecai acted beyond what was supposed to happen. He went above and beyond the call of duty, right? We always know that that's the story. Like what are the stories that we always see? The story, the person who did what they were supposed to do, we almost never hear about them. The people that go beyond the call of duty, that's what we hear, right? Esther went beyond the call of duty. She told everyone, fast for me, 3 days. I'm going in, and I don't know what's going to happen, right? And Mordecai challenged her. He said, if you don't do it, someone else is going to come in and do it for you. So go do it, right? And she went above the call of duty. When you go above the call of duty, that's what we get remembered for, right? Those are the things that people are like, that's the guy, right? There are thousands of examples. Or the gal in this case, right? So he says, and by the way, this Zera Shimshon does this several times. I think with Avram Avinu we learned about a story about how he's willing to go back into save Lot because Lot, if I recall correctly, Lot and Avram had very similar features. And this, according to Zera Shimshon, he says that they have very similar features and physical features, and maybe even like they had almost like Yaakov and Yitzchak had like very similar features. And Avram said that someone might say that they captured Avram because they're looking because looks so much like Avram. They're going to say he captured Avram for the sake of Kiddush Hashem. I'm going to go in and do something crazy, even that's not Avram's nature, because he wanted to be Mekadesh Hashem. So the same thing here. He's saying is that that Mordecai went to do something beyond. He went the sake of being Mekadesh Hashem, V'karei le-Yehudi, and that's why he gets called the name Ha-Yehudi. That's why he gets called the Jew, right? Why is he called the Jew? Because he did something that was so. I had the justification for it. I had the justification. He's not an avodah zara. For God's sake, he's not even. There's nothing wrong with me bowing down to the guy. It doesn't look good, but it's okay. Whatever. Not a big deal. Like at the end of the day, someone's going to say, but when we look at people and we look at what they are doing and we start justifying what they're doing because we think we know better than them, right? But their actions are showing us, teaching us something, right? So the person who, where was I just heard about a story where. Many years ago, I was walking around the building that I was working in, and I saw the CEO walk around with me. We just happened to be crossing in the same hallway or something, and he picks up a tissue. It was on the floor. I didn't even notice it, but he picked it up. And I said, I'm really impressed you picked it up. He goes, it's not because I can't. I know the cleaning guy's going to come by any minute now. He says, because I think it's important for people to see that even the CEO is willing to pick up the dirt. He says, you have to will. You can't be saying, "Oh, I'm the CEO. I'll let the cleaning guy." No, I see something. Do something about it. So the point is, if you know something you can make a difference. An easy, small thing for you might be a big thing, but that small thing that you can do for someone else, it will make a big deal for that person too. It's a kind word, whatever it is. They'll remember you for that and they'll appreciate it. So that's what Mordecai is doing here. Mordecai knew that he could have. He could have bowed down. He didn't. He said no. And then look what happens here. Next part. Now he says. Now and this is exactly. Now when the servants heard that Mordecai that when Mordecai explained to them that it was not actually prohibited for him to bow down, right? But he would wish to say that he was being Mekadesh Hashem. Amru lahaman lir'ot hayamdu divrei Mordecai. That's when they told Hashem, let's see if Mordecai is really willing to hold up to what he said. Right? Was he willing to give up his life for something that's permitted? Meaning, at the end of the day, right? Is he willing to submit himself to death in order to sanctify the name of Hashem, even for something that permits? Or he's going to say, oh no, Haman's threatening to kill the Jews, or he's threatening to kill me. That's my out clause. I got my get out of jail free card, so now I'm going to start bowing down. Is he really committed? Is Mordecai committed enough to say, I'm going to go to I'm going to the end? Whatever you do, I'll do it. Right? What did Daniel Pearl? Remember Daniel Pearl, the famous journalist? Remember before he got killed, what did he say?
My mom's a Jew, my dad's a Jew.
Right, exactly. I'm a Jew. Right? He said, I'm willing to do it until the last second. Right? He was willing to do it. No questions asked. So the point is, the Avadim, the servants of Haman were saying, we want to see if Mordecai is really willing to do, does he really say is he really holding by what he's saying, or he just wants to find, he's waiting to see how far you're willing to go. Right? So he says that now we said now we understand when it says before when you said that when at the Parak Gimel where Haman is introduced, it says that he gets angry at Mordecai and then he wants to kill all the Jews. The question is, what's going on here? It was hard for him to kill only Mordecai. Right? Because we said, wait a minute, I understand. Right? For Mordecai had a good argument. He said, a Jew remains a Jew. Right? If Mordecai says, I'm a Jew, I'm standing with my words. I'm standing. So since Mordecai was consistent with his conduct, with his behavior, and willing to sacrifice his life for the sake of his beliefs, Haman felt that it would be right? It would be not right to kill him. The opposite happened. What did Haman say? Haman said, I want to kill Mordecai. Why? Because he's just another Jew, right? No, but Mordecai held on. And now Haman, what happens with Haman? He gets angry. He says, wait a minute, I actually respect the guy. Why does he get upset? He gets upset because he knows he's right. He gets upset because we've learned in kindergarten, we learned that Haman got upset at Mordecai, and he said, well, Mordecai will expand to all the Jews too. The answer is no. The answer is that, according to the Zera Shimshon, it's that Haman actually started gaining respect for Mordecai because what? He was willing to say, I'm committed. Once you're committed to so much to your thing, Haman has nothing to do there. He's like, I'm getting so angry. Like, when you know the person's right, the other person's right, you get angry because you're just like, oh, I knew that was right. Like, right? So that's the situation here. He says exactly that. About Mordecai, he says, but towards the nation of the Jew, of Mordecai's nation, now I have even greater anger. Why do I have greater anger? Sheinam lo Yudim v'lo Arameim. They're not Jews and not non-Jews. Why? Because they're showing, in some places, they're saying is, no, we're willing to do certain things like the Jews. And then sometimes we're willing to show ourselves like the non-Jews. Example, I'm willing to bow down. I'm willing to drink with the non-Jews. But no, I keep Shabbos. Right? Or no, I keep kosher. Well, no, you don't. You just drink with the non-Jews. Or you're bowing down because I said it. I might kill you guys. If you're a Jew, you're a Jew. Hold up. Stand tall. And he says, that is the intent of why it says, after saying that Haman he said Mordecai should be, in theory, he should be willing. He should be eligible to be killed. He wanted to kill all the Jews because he said, he says, Mordecai, at least Mordecai was a real Jew. Mordecai was a real Jew. He's committed. But everyone else, they don't look like they don't look like they're Jews because they're willing to bow down. They're willing to drink. They're doing all the things that if you were a real Jew, you wouldn't do either of those things. At least Mordecai's consistent. Mordecai's saying, I'm not drinking, I'm not bowing down, I'm not doing anything because I'm holding on. He said Haman was confused by the Jew who was behaving in some ways like the non-Jew and some ways like the Jew. You can't have it both ways, is what Haman is saying. Now, obviously, that's not the right logic, but the point is that Haman's logic and thought process was, if you're already willing to bend on this law, and you're willing to bend on this law, are you really a Jew? Are you really doing something that you're supposed to, like, are you really holding on to what it's meant to be? And he gives an example here. He says, the example is in the Gemara in Yerushalmi. In the Yerushalmi it says, Rabbi Abba bar Zamina aite lechad aramai besarden vela. A non-Jew comes to Rabbi Abba bar Zamina, and he says to him, excuse me, he says, eat this not kosher piece of meat. That's the non-Jew tells Rabbi Abba bar Zamina. He says, or I'm going to kill you. So now, in theory, what could he have done? Before the rest of the story, what could Rabbi Abba bar Zamina do? It's onus, right? So in theory, if someone's going to say, I'm going to kill you, what could I have done? I could eat it, in theory, right? Right. So he says, "Vilo katila, I will not kill. I will kill you." Amar le ibait lemiktal kitol. If you wish to kill me, so Rabbi Abba bar Zamina says, if you want to kill me, kill me. I'm not going to. I'm not going to eat not kosher meat. Amar le man mod alach ilu achat havila katila. Who informed you that if you would have eaten the meat, I would have indeed kill you? Meaning. Excuse me. So he's saying, OUD, either be a full-fledged Jew or a full-fledged non-Jew. So what he's saying is, it's just a test. I'm testing you. How do you know it was just a test? Meaning, the non-Jew is saying to you, how do you know it's just a test? How do you know to answer back? Right? What would a normal non-Jew, a normal person in that situation probably would say is, give me the meat, I'll eat it. But Rabbi Amr Bar Zamina has the chutzpah, if you will, to go back and say, if you're going to kill me, that's it. Got nothing to lose. Right? I'm not willing to eat the non-kosher meat, even though most likely I probably have. So most likely he could, in theory, right? When he was willing to sacrifice his life for his beliefs, what happened? The non-Jew says, I respect you for your standing strong. So the problem is that we think a lot of times that we have to give up our beliefs because what other people are thinking. And I said the other night to someone I was learning with, we said, when we look at the extremes on either side, a lot of times the two extremes have a lot more in common with each other than we think, right? Again, whether you agree with it or not, I'm just saying the two extreme sides of any situation usually are much more in common because they're willing to go the whole way. The people in the middle is where the problem is. Now, I'm not going into politics. I'm not going to anything. I'm just saying in general, when you have someone who's so like they say in Yiddish, verbrent, like they're going hardcore. On either side of the argument, whatever argument it is, they're willing to go all the way, they're willing to go all the way. It doesn't make a difference what side they hold. The guy in the middle says, well, we got to start thinking about this and this and this and this. That's the person that usually is the easiest one to convince one way, or like to convince. Because why? They're already showing their card. They're saying, So the point is, why do I love this piece so much, even though it's very short? The reason why I love this piece so much is because Mordecai is teaching us a very powerful lesson. Not just because it's about Mordecai, my name, but he says, I love this line. This line says, Ani rotzeh liot Yehudi shalem. That's the line, right? Ve'ini rotzeh li'stachavot lo klal v'ikar. I want to be an absolute Jew, right? Now we can obviously ask the question: is what does it mean to be an absolute Jew? But the point here is that saying is when we're tested in a daily life, and when we go traveling, when wherever we are in a situation where we are not necessarily exposed to people who are either less religious than us, not Jewish at all, what do we do to say, I'm going to hold on? Like, do we say, is that kosher? Is there a place I can go that maybe not, that maybe people won't necessarily question what I'm doing? Is there a way for me to explain right? Or I went on business trips. I used to go on business trips more, and I don't do it as much. When I go on business trips and I walk around with the kippah, right? So now when we go on kippah, people always see you, they ask you a question. I'm just like, well, this is a kosher establishment, so I can eat here. What is kosher? You start explaining. Oh, so does that mean that you can't eat you can't eat burgers and cheese? No, I can't eat burgers and cheese, right? Oh, so we can't go to McDonald's? No, you can't go. Right. So then and then they say, oh, we'll make the same food, but we won't put, the meat on top. I'm like, it's not so simple. Oh, I'll take you to a restaurant and we'll tell the maitre d' that you're kosher. I'm like, okay, let's see what happens with that. And I go to the restaurant and the guy's like, I have no idea what that is. I'm like, I didn't think so we'll figure it out. Whatever, but the point is, and people ask me all the time now, like, oh, we're so sorry, what's going on? One guy last week, 2 weeks ago, when the first hostages came back, these two guys from India that I work with. No, the first, just now, like the first round, they called me. I think they texted me on Teams and they said, Mordecai, you must be thrilled. These guys, the hostages are coming back. I'm like, yeah. From the outside, it looks great. I'm really happy. Honestly, I'm happy that these people came back alive. Period. Full stop. But I said, and he said, but what's the problem? I said, because we're getting 3 back. We're not getting all of them back. We're playing into their hand. And also, I said, this situation should have never happened. And I'm explaining to them, and I'm like, they're parading them around, this whole thing, and they're like, whoa. They're like, they were blown away. They said we only saw the picture of the release, so they thought it was like the biggest thing. I'm like, there's 99 at that time. There were like 99 other people stuck, and I don't know we don't know anything about most of them. We don't know their status, right? I'm like, that's what we have to think about. And he's like, oh, and then every so often someone asks me, so what are you doing for Christmas? I'm like, I don't celebrate Christmas. So I sent them a link to Hanukkah. They're like, oh, okay. But the point is, what can we do as Jews to make sure that people who are around us, whether even our own kids, or our own family, when we're committed, so we go to shul, or we go to keep Shabbos, or we learn something, sit down and learn, people see that statement. They say, okay, I have 5 extra minutes, so yeah, maybe I will be on my phone sometimes, but most of the time I'm learning. And they'd say, oh, someone I forgot who I heard this from recently. They said, it's great that you go to so many shiurim, but you should also learn at home too. Because your kids the kids see you go up, get out of your house, go to a shiur. But that means that every time you want to learn, you have to get up and go, right? That means you're not home. That means Abba or Mommy are not home when they go learn, right? But you should also see that Abba and Mommy can learn at home, and they spend time learning at home. Or, uncle or whatever it is. They want to see that they were committed to it. So the point is, what can we do to show that we're really Jews, that we're committed to this, obviously we should never be put into tests that are so extreme like this, but if we put into this test, are we willing to go with, the extra mile to say, even around our Arab cousins, sometimes our Arab cousins really don't mean anything. Like the guy at the gas station always, he's kind, he's nice. So say thank you, do that extra little thing. Thank you so much, have a good day. Is it everyone I do it to? No, but some guys are scary, I have to admit. But okay, so that was the first one. Now what time is it? Okay, we'll have about 10 more minutes. We'll see if we can. That was a good Torah. We'll try to do. If we don't finish the whole thing now, we probably won't. But let's. We'll do Drush number 1 in Megilat Esther. We'll start with Megilat, Drush number 1. Going over why we're starting with Megilat Esther at all. First of all, it's 30 days before the Chag. Second of all, I think Megilat Esther has a lot to teach us. Third of all, I think I happen to like the Zera Shimshon's thought process on the Megillah in general. And most of his Torahs on the Megillah are relatively interesting. Also, one of them, we have to remember that the fast is Thursday night this year. Right? Thursday, right. So we're Megillah Thursday night, so that's already one night, one week is off. So we're already 3 weeks to Purim. So then you have to 3 weeks to Purim. You have to squeeze it into 2 weeks. It's not so easy. So we'll try to do Aleph. Let's do Aleph. So he says, in the first parak of Megillah, it says that Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak patach lepritcha lahai parsha be'acha. So it says that the beginning of Masechet Megillah, like towards Daf Yud or so, a lot of the Rabbanim start opening up. They start talking about the Perushim, or they start talking about the Megillah, and they have like a pasuk that they kind of like open up their explanation about what's going on around the Megillah using a certain pasuk from anywhere in Tanakh. And so Rabbi Nachman Bar Yitzchak said, he quotes the pasuk in Tehillim that says, "Lulei Hashem shaya lanu bekum aleinu Adam v'lo melech adkan." So the Zera Shimshon quotes this one specifically. Bekum aleinu Adam. The pasuk says, "Bekum aleinu Adam." When an Adam, v'lo melech, and he says that when Rabbi Nachman Bar Yitzchak says that the whole story of the Purim story comes about that Hashem saved us from a person, not a king. Adam, lo melech. Okay, so that's how he starts the story. That's how Rabbi Nachman would start this whole explanation about the whole Megillah story, around this idea that, thank you Hashem, had it not been for Hashem who saved us from a person, a regular person, not a king, right? Right. So he's just, the Perush here, the Hebrew Perush says, Hitzil HaKadosh Baruch Hu otanu miyedei Haman, Shaya rak Adam hediot. He was just a simple person. Now he says, so the Zera Shimshon asked the question, Kasheh, Ma'achid Eislanu b'drashazo, velo adraba, natan lanu makom lakshot, ima emet shelo kam ki im Adam ve'ino melech, im kein, haneh shel hatzala ino kol kach gadol, lo shayach lomar, lulei Hashem shaya lanu. Right, so he says, what's the question here? The Zera Shimshon says, wait a minute, if it was just a simple person, does that make the nace bigger or smaller? Smaller. Because what? It's just a simple person. It's not like some big royalty guy, some guy who's in charge of 127 countries. It's some simpleton guy. Some Haman or some Joe Schmo on the street who decided to get upset. He says, okay, I'm going to go kill the Jews. But he didn't have the backing. He didn't have the gusto to do anything. What could he have really done? So the Zera Shimshon asks a very good question. He says, wait a minute, if that's the case, no big deal. Now, what's the big deal? So he says, then he says, excuse me, he says, then the pasuk doesn't read right, because the pasuk in Tehillim says, Lulei Hashem shaya lanu bekum aleinu Adam, right? And what he says, the whole point is bekum aleinu Adam. Adam is a simple person. Then why do we need Hashem to Lulei Hashem? Had it not been for Hashem to come in, who knows what would have happened? Zera Shimshon says, no, that doesn't make sense. I can't ask that question. I can't ask the question of, I can't make a statement of Hashem was there for us, Hashem really saved us, if it was just a simple person. That's the question. So he says, in order to explain this, he says, Kedele Taretz Kushazo. I'm sorry that my voice is like this. It's been like this since Sunday, and it's not going away. Kedele Taretz Kushazo Mishum Hachi Rabbi Nachman Bar Yitzchak Hayapotech Megilat Esther. So he says, in order to explain this, So in order to explain this question, he says that we have to, in order to explain this question, we have to understand that he says, B'nei Purim no dalanu beverur shakadosh baruch hu maktim lanu rufuah lamakah. There's a famous idea that Hashem, before He punishes us, he's already come up with a solution to the problem, right? A famous example would be, in the Purim story, it says that Haman weighed a certain amount of shkalim, and the Gemara there says, you were trying to weigh shkalim to kill my sons. We already had shekel, chatzi shekel, in the midbar already. So their chatzi shekel from then is going to save this shekel. That chatzi shekel that they did is going to save them from this shekel, right? So in other words, the point is that there's a lot of examples. That's just one example. Shalom. So he says that. He says here. So he says, what do we know about the first letters that Achashverosh wrote? What was the first letter that Achashverosh wrote in the Megillah?
It was Shalom Bayis.
Right.
The mention Sholet in the...
Okay, now, if I were a king, and I wanted to send a message to the entire 127 nations, and I say to people, hey, men, take control of your women. Does that do anything? At that time in history, men were in control of the women anyway. There was no chiddush about what he's doing. It wasn't like
that part of the world.
Exactly. I'm saying, like, what was he saying? Was there anything new? Was he saying, like, hey, take control of, he wasn't saying, like, in the next letter he says, okay, Jews need, all Jews have to bow down, whatever it was. Jews have to bow down to Haman. They have to listen to what Haman says, whatever, the signet ring. Then you can say, okay, that's a good letter. But the point is that he's going to prove, so he said, excuse me, so he said, so he says here like this. Had Achashverosh not sent the first message, basically what he's saying is that the first message Achashverosh sent undermined his entire kingdom. Because the first letter that he sent was a letter of stupidity. I hate to say that, but it's true. But the truth is, he said nothing special. He said nothing that people didn't know already. Okay, I mean, it just proves like what level Achashverosh was talking about. Like, I don't need a reminder. I don't need a king. I don't need the president of the United States to say respect your wife, right? Like, maybe if this president said it, I'd be impressed. But at the end of the day, like, if the king of the world said to me, make sure to respect your wife, dude, I know that already. That's not news, right? And that's the first thing you're going out with. Like, the first thing I meet Achashverosh, and the first thing I hear him do is send a letter to the men of the world saying, this is what you got to do. That undermines his entire kingdom, because his whole reason, like what they say, reason to enter is nothing. What are you doing? You're a simple guy, right? So he says here, right, because he says, so the Parish here says, he says, so he says, Il malei gvot harishonot. Had it not been for the first letter that Achashverosh sent, then of course all the Jews would have been wiped out. But the first letters, all the non-Jews saw the first letter, and they're just like, okay, game over. Like, I've got nothing. What, this king's going to tell me what to do? Like, now every other letter that he sends me is worth nothing. So he says, this is what he's proving, the Zera Shimshon is proving, saying is that the first letter that Achashverosh sent was like the beginning of the refuat of the Makkah. Meaning, once Achashverosh sent out that letter, which was obviously sent by Hashem, made him send that letter, then what? All the non-Jews that were willing to go out and kill the Jews have said, I've got this king? If this king told me to do it, I'm not doing it after what you sent me. It's like sending like a Hallmark card. Hey, wife, thank you. Like, you're not doing me anything. You're not helping me. What are you telling me? So therefore he says, once they accepted Achashverosh as like an idiot, like as a fool, then every other letter afterwards has nothing, bears no weight. So he says, V'chol shar nisim, afilu anesha yitziat Mitzrayim, lo nadam mimenu zeh beveirur. Right? So he said, now he says, let's look at other nisim that happened. Let's look at other nisim. Maybe we can look at, he says, let's find some other nisim. So he says, there's a machloket. Actually, it's a machloket in the Gemara, I believe. But he says here, let's look at Yitziat Mitzrayim. That's a good place to start. So he says, let's look at Yitziat Mitzrayim. He says, even there, we didn't know exactly whether Hashem was magdim the refuah to the Makkah. We don't know whether Hashem. It wasn't obvious to us, right? Even in the Megillah, it's clearly not obvious, right? He's pointing to a case. What he's saying is, let's look at Yetziat Mitzrayim. It wasn't obvious there that every one of the situations that happened to the Jews, there was already like a solution to the problem beforehand. So he says, he goes to the Asara Ma'amarot by the Ma'amar Asara Ma'amarot. It's a sefer based on I don't want to call it Kabalat because it's not really Kabalat per se, but he quotes. He doesn't even. He says that Hashem was obligated to in the sefer Asara Ma'amarot. It says that Hashem was quote unquote obligated to take the Jews out of Mitzrayim, because to redeem a Jew who was being sold as a slave to an idolater. Okay? Now, since the obligation applies only when the Jew was sold by another Jew, so what do we know? Who sold? That's why Hashem set it up that the brothers sold Yosef to the non-Jew, right? To the Mitzrayim or to the Ishmaelim or whatever. Because if the brothers hadn't done it, then what would have happened? Then Hashem would say, listen, it's a non-Jew, bought it, took him as an Eved, no big deal. Here it's because a Jew sold a Jew to the thing. So there he's starting to show you that it's already Magdim Refuah L'Makah. So he's saying, but Yosef had to be kidnapped by his brothers, so that way it sets up the scene in which then Hashem says, a Jew was kidnapped by his own brothers, sold by his own brothers to a non-Jew, now I have an obligation to free him. So that's how he's setting it up. Now, we're going to stop here because we're just a little bit late.